Okay, we're back for part two of federalism and the courts. If you're still listening, congratulations. Okay, so after FDR packs the court, or attempts to, it doesn't work, all right, but he attempts to pack the court, gets public opinion on his side. Supreme Court kind of realizes, all right, we're really losing our credibility here. So that year, after the court packing, a case comes down called NLRB versus Jones Laughlin Steel. Almost never possible to be on the exam, so I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Okay, NLRB is National Labor Relations Board. It questioned the validity of a minimum wage. All right, where is setting a minimum wage in the Constitution? It's not. Therefore, it's reserved to the states. However, federal government is arguing that money you make is interstate commerce, therefore it's their responsibility and they can regulate it, okay? And they win. It's kind of a confusing case, not really worth talking too much about. The one that's a little more interesting, and this is what you're going to talk about in class tomorrow on the healthcare case, all right? This is Wickard versus Filburn, all right? This pertained to a farmer in upstate New York, okay, who basically had a 150-acre plot of grain that he was growing, okay, corn-fed, if you will. And he, by law, the AAA had said that the most this guy could grow is 150 acres, all right? That was limiting the production of the farmers. You know the whole AAA idea. It's the idea of paying farmers not to work, not to grow, all right? Or at least limit their production, so therefore supply would go down, demand would go up, more profits for the farmers, okay? Well, farmer Filburn here decided he was going to grow 3 extra acres of feed, okay? Only to feed his cattle and his pigs and his livestock, okay? His 150 was going to be done to sell on the open market, and then 3 acres to feed his livestock. The AAA came in and basically fined him for growing over what he was allowed to do. He was basically offsetting the market that the AAA was trying to regulate for agriculture. And his argument was, I'm growing it in New York, I'm feeding it in New York, everything's good. Okay? You shouldn't be able to do this. All right? And in this case, and this is all in World War II now, the Supreme Court, again, knowing that they kind of have to support some of Roosevelt's policies. How dare you rule against the president during a war? So they end up coming up with the conclusion that if this person was growing the 150 acres, okay, that he was supposed to, he would then have to buy 3 more acres of feed to give his livestock. And if he was going to buy it, he would have to buy it on the open market. Therefore, it would be interstate commerce. And since it would be interstate commerce, Congress gets to regulate it. Okay? Even though it's not, it would be if he was following the laws and the rules. Goofy, yes. Strange case, sure. But that's how the whole healthcare thing came down. So that's important precedent for the healthcare decision. All right, so now we're going to get into some civil rights issues. I'll go over this just really quick. This was Heart of Atlanta Motel versus United States. This challenged the validity of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The case was actually in 1968. I have my years off on here. I apologize. Basically, a guy was challenging the Civil Rights Act, saying it was unconstitutional for him to have to take African Americans into his hotel. His argument was that that violated the 13th Amendment. And yes, I said 13th Amendment. He was arguing it was involuntary servitude to have to take in this African American into his hotel. As you can guess, he lost 9-0 because Congress had the authority to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 because it was interstate commerce. That person from Tennessee that goes to a hotel in Atlanta, it becomes interstate commerce. All right, so you can see Congress is pretty much getting its way, able to do whatever it wants. All right, with various laws and things under the Commerce Clause. All right, until U.S. versus Lopez in 1995. All right, this involved the case of the Guns Free School Zone Act. It became a federal crime to bring a gun within 50 feet or 500 feet of a high school. I think it was 500 feet. Okay. And the person was arrested. Mr. Lopez brought his gun to school, was arrested, being tried in federal court. His argument was that law is unconstitutional. There's no interstate commerce involved. Congress argued that if you brought a gun to school, the gun could have been made in one state, sold in another. All right, if a gun's brought to a school, property values are going to decline. People are going to move out of state. That's going to affect interstate commerce. They made some really loose arguments, okay? And basically they had precedent on their side. There had been no cases limiting use of the Commerce Clause up until then. Okay, so what the Supreme Court said in this case, and this is what's important, is that if there's commerce involved, it has to be actual commerce. There has to be the buying and selling of goods across state line for Congress to regulate it. You can no longer imply that it would be commerce, like the Wickard case or other cases. All right. So Lopez lost in this, Lopez won. And the U.S. lost, basically weakening the federal government's position, and that law was struck down as unconstitutional. Okay, so Congress could not regulate firearms within a school zone just because it was not interstate commerce and they had no other authority to do so. Okay, U.S. versus Morrison, we talked about this in class. This is your Violence Against Women's Act, also not interstate commerce, therefore Congress could not regulate it. Okay, so the law was unconstitutional. Still waiting for somebody to tell me how it was authorized last year. Getting around that, I got to look that one up, or I'm hoping you guys will. And our final case is Gonzalez versus Raich and Gonzalez versus Oregon. Gonzalez is our Attorney General under George Bush at the time, and we already read and talked about Raich. That went back to the Wickard case. Okay, but what kind of happened here is that the judges kind of implied their moral views as opposed to their constitutional views. Antonin Scalia, who's one of the more noted conservatives on the Supreme Court, has generally opposed any federal government intrusions into the rights of states, but he switched over and voted with the liberals on this one and upheld the Controlled Substances Act, which is the act that limited medicinal marijuana in states where it was legalized. Okay, and he did that because he's basically against marijuana, being a conservative, but he used a liberal judicial philosophy to strike down a state law in that particular case. And then Gonzalez versus Oregon, all right, struck down a federal ban on assisted suicide, saying that assisted suicide was not interstate commerce. That was something up for a state to determine, so Oregon could continue with it. So kind of conflicting views, okay? In one case, you have the feds winning, okay, outlawing medicinal marijuana. In this case, you have the state winning, upholding assisted suicide, okay? So some inconsistencies, but those are some biggie federalism cases, and then obviously this healthcare one is huge as well. Thanks for listening. All right, have a wonderful evening, and we will debate healthcare tomorrow in class.